Is it intervals data or is it interval data? Should be interval data. Alright, so we have all time in there. So we actually need these guys to be positioned independently of each other is what it's looking like. In case they're hidden. Alright, so we have these details with the margins and everything else. So what are our widths here? We're using text button 5, so our widths are 30. And we've got 100. So I guess it's going to be left. This will be 50 minus, this will be what, 35 vmin. Alright, so plus 15 is going to be 65 plus 2.5. We could just put it at 70. And that'll be 30, so that'll get me all the way over there. So 65 is not good enough, so it should be like 67.5. And this, I guess, should be just 2.5. So now we've got our all time in the middle there. Alright. Can only pay with a card? Well, let me see what we can do with our products here. So let me see. With this one, let's see, advanced options. Sales page details. Looks like we're just selling licenses and all that stuff. Let me see. And our checkout options are all those things. Payment redirection to our download page. Because if I go to it, I get this like just card information. Well, let me see. Yeah, it just has card stuff on there. Let me see if there's something else. Alright, so in order to do that, I have to actually set up PayPal on my side, is what it looks like. You can enable PayPal. You can need to check the business associate. Alright, well, it's possible for me to add the PayPal stuff, but I gotta go do a whole bunch of bullshit for that, so I'll write it down. It's not a bad plan. Our main stuff is we're gonna be selling on Steam anyway, so a lot of that stuff. Also, I don't like PayPal. But that's not a bad plan. I should probably go add that. I'll see if I can do that sometime this week. Though, if you enter your email on the beta sign-up page, we'll be doing an update this weekend, and you're pretty much guaranteed that we will, if you go ahead and enter your email there, we'll tell you when the update is live, and it's a very good chance we hand out codes for every update, so when the update goes live, pretty much we give everybody who has signed up a free code, so if you want to get it, and the next update's going to have stats and stuff, so hopefully a lot more people will be showing up throughout the week. So it should be a much more lively environment. Okay, so when you click on our buttons here, like we click on seasonal, why aren't we... Like, we're selecting it, that's for sure, but this thing is staying all the time. So we're setting up the interval names. Okay, so that's fine. So interval names is working properly, but the we need to set up our other stuff. We need to set up our interval time buttons. So seasonal, season 0, 1, 2, monthly, March, and May. All right. Do we have the daily stuff in there properly? No, we don't. Daily should be like that, so that works. So monthly is looking okay. The problem is we've got, you know, like the wrong times in here for stuff. There we go. So this is just too long. I guess we don't need the day. Like, we can just do the day number, so I can just do, like, get short month. We don't need the day of the week. And let's do the spaces there. Seasonal, March 31st, April 7th. Daily, sorts of stuff. It's looking correct. See how it looks in the game at the moment. So seasonal has update 5, monthly has just March, weekly has that, daily has March 31st and March 29th. Alright, so what is the start time for this one? That's saying March 28th, and this one is March 29th, but in my time zone it's March 29th. So we've got March 28th, March 29th, and then this day is saying March 31st. Okay, so it's got the right times. The issue is this the March 30th day never existed. So there was no leaderboard for it, so that's fine. That'll be cool. We'll see like update 5, update 6. And then we need to actually load the stats for that interval. So we're getting there, getting closer. Alright, well, I'll be right back. So the next thing now is to actually load the information and fill out that high score table. Okay, so what's going to happen is we're going to click on one of these buttons. So we set up all of our buttons. Then basically once this is done, we need to actually load the information. And what do we have for our call for that? So I guess cur is going to be here, so if our where are we actually attaching all of our data? Like load stats? Yeah. Otherwise, we want to just we'll call load stats on this thing. Otherwise, we need to load the interval for the stats. So if we have a current interval, that means we've got all the information we need. It's going to be interval ID. I guess just interval ID, and then that's it. And I guess we'll include our self in that. So just true. No, we're interval stat leaderboard. No, this is history. What am I doing? Fetch stat history. So it's just going to be just our own user. So Do we have our user ID here? We should. So we'll load that in later. And that'll get us to load our stats. So we need to go write that function. Hello, Jivik. A lot of code for stats? I mean, you'd be surprised, maybe, just how complicated stats can be. I mean, if you haven't seen the tech document for the whole thing for missions and stats, you know, the just the design of the whole system is, you know, this entire document right here is the technical design for how everything with stats has to work. So, you know, like this is just the stats database. And then you need the backend servers for munging all the stats together and doing the intervals and the rollovers for that. And then you need the reporting for that. And then you need the fetching of the correct information. And then you finally, at the end of the day, have, you know, a thing that you can actually kind of click through and see useful information on your stats. And it's one of those things where you might think, oh, you know, the hardest part, you know, oh, I'm going to go write some AI or some shit. And you're like, oh, okay, not too bad. And you're like, I'm going to go write a giant stats system. And you're like, oh, Jesus Christ. It's going to take forever. Like, I know the guys at EA2D, when they're working on an achievement system for Dragon Age Legends, they spent like a month and a half just designing it. And it was just like, Jesus Christ, are you for real? Yeah, we already got the user profile stuff done. That's in there. So I'm working on the stat history, and yeah, closing the loop is always a very good feeling. Especially when you get that UI screen that comes out and it's got all the correct stuff. So I need to write the load stats for interval call. Okay, so we just need to go make this function. All right, and this is fetch stat history. So yeah, one of those things. Though I'm curious to see exactly how many more people show up consistently if there are leaderboards for this game. Because right now the biggest issue is basically if I'm not streaming and playing the game, or if Adam is not streaming, or somebody else streaming and playing the game, or actively organizing people to show up to play, people don't play it. It's hard to get 6 people at the same time unless your service reaches critical mass and it's got enough people that there's always 6 people online to play a full match. Alright, so we are going to need to fetch all the information here. If not, you just leave. And that's kind of the thing, is with at least a little bit of stats there for all this sorts of stuff, you'll at least be able to say, oh, hey, this person was online earlier because like they're on the leaderboard for daily stats, and you're like, oh man, they got more wins than I do? That's bullshit. Or their accuracy's better or something else. So that'll help us get like some reason for you to do a few things, and then once we have missions, it'll be, people will be online or whatever, just kind of ready to go, and then like, playing their own missions and things like that. And then, we also probably have a system there where you can register for, matchmaking or whatever, where you can go practice in your missions and stuff like that, and then when enough people have shown up for a game, it'll say like, hey, you want to join the game? There's enough people online right now. All right, let's see. Interval IDs is another one. Stat contacts and stat names, we're just going to fetch everything. Yeah, that's fine. And the mission system also is going to allow us to do a lot more later, such as the mission system is robust enough that we could actually make a single player game out of it. And kind of build the original game that we always wanted with this one. So it'll be interesting to see kind of if we come full circle with all the game design and everything else. Alright, so load stats for interval. Fetch stat history callback. Get intervals around time. No, it's fetch stat history. We also need to do request set users and request set interval IDs. Okay, so let's fail to fetch stats for interval. Got stats for interval back from server. So I need, so we got user interval stats. What does that object look like? So it's this account ID interval and then a list of stats for them. So So we need another game object here. So we have stat intervals, user stat profile, then we have user stats. So what we need to do is create a user stats list out of the user interval stats. So we're going to get back an object we can use, is what it looks like. Actually, we're making a user stat profile, is what it looks like. And this request is going to return and we need an event. This will be user stat history updated, and it's going to give us stat intervals. No, it's going to give us a user stat profile. Alright, so we need to go to our transformation utils and actually start using this. So we are going to transform. This guy is going to take a user interval stats array. And it'll transform it into this thing. You've been using blueprints for about 2 years? And you haven't done any of the C++ stuff? Yeah. It's not too crazy. Yeah, all the arrows and double colons and bullshit. Like, do you see that question I had about like 3 hours ago? Some guy came on and he was saying like, what the hell is the difference between like the two colons, you know, what's the difference between a namespace and the arrow operator? And before I was able to actually like look over at chat, the dude had rage quit out of chat. So I went on to explain it and he never responded, so I assume he was gone. But basically, if you don't, like, that's one of those things I remember many times, like the first semester in college with programming when I knew nothing and just spending hours and then it being like, oh, I forgot the double colons. Like I put like 1 colon there instead of 2 and it was just like 30 minutes of my life wasted. And just like, Jesus Christ, really? Wait, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I need to look at stat service, the fetch stat history. Alright, user interval stats is going to have an account ID. So it's going to be info.account.account ID is this. If Unreal 4 had JavaScript, it'd be so easy. Oh, well, you can always plug in, a JavaScript engine if you need to. And if you want me to take a look at a link there, just go ahead and PM me on Twitch the link, and I'll make sure it's good. All right, so these are interval stats. We need the actual interval, but we don't care about the interval. So it's really this T-array of user stat history is what we care about. So stat history pointer reference. So these stats. User stat history. So we're looking for, we've got the interval ID, interval context, stat context. We have the stat name and the stat value. All right, so we need to switch off of the enum for the stat. And the stat context. So we have to do all this trash all over again. Can we combine some of these guys together? Basically what we need to do is we need to call fill user profile stat, and we're going to pass in the context. I guess we're going to pass in info, the context, and the name. So what that'll do is we need the F user profile. And we can take all this trash and put it here. And as a result, we'll be able to do stuff without copy pasting absolutely everything. So this will be call to fill out a proper user stat. It's a plugin called Unreal.js. Twitch mistook it for a link. Yeah, just put like a space in there. And Unreal.js. There's probably, some on the marketplace that already has all that wrapped up nicely in it. Alright, so we need fill user profile stat, and we got the info. We need the stat get stat context, and then we got stat get stat name, and then we need stat get stat value. So this guy is going to need, I guess, the long int64 value. So that should fill out all this stuff. The user profile stat. So that should transform everything. So let's just make sure all of that compiles. Yeah, one of the nice things about writing a bunch of your stuff in JavaScript is you can run it pretty much anywhere. One of the things at a Hack Day project about 3 or 4 years ago, I wrote the game in JavaScript, and the graphics and everything else was real simple. Everything was nicely packaged. So I actually released this Hackday project on Fire TV, on the web browser, and on PC. And I actually made like a custom PC client and a custom Fire TV client and a custom web client, and pretty much because the interfaces were real simple, like load this texture and then just like, you know, display this texture at this location on the screen. It was real easy just to be like, you know, okay, can you run JavaScript? All right, cool. Well, just expose like this graphics thing to, you know, have this thing work. So what is this? Fill user profile stats. Just have return here. Legal call of non-static. Yeah, this needs to be static. Undeclared identifier for uStat history. User stat history. That's an object that exists. Is it supposed to be inside of stats? Yes. It's supposed to look like that. So you just gotta wait for this. Though I'm not really a super fan of JavaScript at a certain point, because kind of untyped languages, as you start writing a whole bunch of stuff in it, kind of turns into garbage. So, like we've tried writing tools in JavaScript or in Python, and they always just rot. Alright, so I'm going to need to regenerate the event stuff because I haven't done that yet. So usually with scripting stuff like JavaScript or Lua or Python or whatever, I try to write a bunch of heavy lifting code that does complicated operations off in kind of the core language, which would be whatever's compiled. So your Java, your C++, those sorts of things. And that way stuff doesn't get too out of hand, because you've got kind of your good area, C++, and you got your trash area, which would be your scripting language. And that's worked out pretty well in the past. But yeah, that's one thing. Blueprints, like if you're an engineer, at some point blueprints, there's a lot of stuff there where blueprints are pretty bad at expressing stuff, especially like complex math operations. You had to put the giant spaghetti code mess for something that's usually a pretty simple mathematical operation. So that can be real annoying. So I can see why you'd want like JS or some other scripting language to supplement blueprints. You could definitely maintain a 60 FPS game with something written entirely in JavaScript. JavaScript with V8 and all that stuff, it's actually very performant. I need to regenerate. It would be mainly if you wrote the entire goddamn thing, as you said, written entirely in JS. Yeah, that might get pretty difficult, because I could see like if you're like registering graphics objects, like, oh, hook up this material with this thing, and like behind the scenes, you know, you got your C++ making everything nice and efficient, and it's just like your update loop script is just doing something simple like, hey, run Pathfinder. Do I have a path? All right, and Pathfinder's off in C++ land. But if it's like, yeah, I'm gonna write literally everything in JavaScript, it's kind of like, yeah, good luck, man. That'll be a little while. At that point, it'd be like, all right, have JavaScript off on a separate thread entirely from your game engine, and just passing messages back for what to draw or some shit. The game ticks over at 10 frames per second, but the graphics run at 60. So I'm almost there. This should have it so we're fetching our stat history, and all I have to do is actually shove that data into the table, and then I should have full stat history for my user. Alright, so we'll boot this guy up, and what I want to see here is our stats after it's transformed. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting with this project. At some point we'll be done with it. And I think one of the interesting things is how much learning has gone into this project so far. Because we've actually gotten through a lot of stuff, figuring crap out, doing things differently. Never know. Okay, so for our offline and online stats, well, online stats aren't going to have anything, but offline stats also have nothing in them. What was our request? Our request had interval IDs of nothing. Stat contexts has, yeah, okay, so something's screwed up here. The interval ID is being set. So we have our interval ID. Let me just go look at this in the database. So okay. And what is the user? There's nothing in it. Oh, that's why. Yeah, probably if I was going to do this project over again, probably would have made a much smaller project to start with. But who cares? Like, that's just... We actually spent a year and shipped it, and we're in the middle of going through the whole update process to actually make it really live on Steam. At some point they're like, what would you do differently? It's like, well, you never know. If we had made a smaller project, maybe we wouldn't be here anymore. And if we made a bigger one, who knows? Maybe we should have gone for a publisher, or tried to get more people, or done all sorts of other shit. Or focused on that single player game completely and said no to multiplayer. At the end of the day, though, we're still beating Amazon Game Studios hands down. They're about $40 million in the hole compared to us, so I think we're okay. That's like my we haven't lost $40 million. That's my bar for doing all right with the project. All right, so let's see. We got our users. Yeah, we got our users. And do we got any infos? Yeah, we got our account. We've got our offline stats. And it's all coming back. Excellent. So, now that we actually have our stats, we can shove those stats into our stuff. So that's the profile screen. We need to go to the history screen. We need to register for that event. And that event is update stats history. Can't fuck up as bad as EA. Hey, they're a publicly traded company. They're doing their stuff. Let's see. So if we got all of our stats, we're gonna want to slap all this in here. That's a bug. Okay. So what we have to do now is we need to make stat history lines for every one of these things. This object is a user stat profile. So we've got online and offline stats. So it's going to be stats.online stats dot and then all this trash. Okay, so the question is, should I iterate over these guys? Do I even have this variable list? Or do I just copy paste the absolute hell out of this thing? Well, why don't we just go for the copy paste? Because then we can enforce the order based on some stuff that we want. So let's fill it out. Alright. Now, all these need to match. It's true. So let's go ahead and make them all match. It's just amazing how much data transformation has to be done, just because all this is just transforming data that is useful, like recording data and then recording that in a way that's searchable, and then pulling that data out in a way that's useful, that you can actually search, and then pushing that data through different systems all over the place, getting it to where you need it to be, and then just putting it in the right column is just, it's amazing how much goes into that sort of crap. We just need to Patrick everything. You're like, oh, that'll be easy. You're like, no, it's difficult to Patrick everything. Let's see, ball pop-ups. You have to do a lot of code transformations. I mean, yeah, it's when you're dealing with all the systems, because it's like in certain systems you're dealing with lists of users instead of specific users, and the systems are all in terms of like rows in the database. They're not in terms of like logical objects. So you need to then change all that crap back into logical objects that can actually be used, and without just making everything suck.